Qatar. Qatar, one of the richest countries in the world, was as poor a century ago as Somalia is today. Qatar, which ranks fourth in the world list in terms of per capita incomes, curbed when 2 meals a day until a century ago. A country ago, Qatar was a small fishing village. Then the course of destiny changed so. The royal family, who mitigated their house to run the country's affairs, became one of the 5 richest royal families in the world. How did Qatar become so rich? How much wealth does Qatar has? What facilities are available to its citizens, which are available to cities in a few developed countries of the world? Let's find out this all. So let's start with the history and geography of Qatar. Evidence of human presence in Qatar is thousands of years old, but regular settlement took place here only 22 years ago. Until the 18th century AD, the name of this country was Qatar, which was later shortened to Qatar. This country was a part of Iran Empire's Rashidun Caliphate and Umayyad empires in different periods. During the Umayyad periods, the regions gained considerable importance for the breeding of horse and camels. It then became an important maritime trade route in the 8th century AD. The Abbasids made Qatar a trading center and the house was also made of stones. Qatar also became famous for its pearls. And in 1320, when Qatar came under the influence of the Hormuz Empire, so they started getting the pearls as tribute from the Qataris. Until 1788, Qatari territories were sometimes occupied by the Portuguese and sometimes by the Turkish. Different tribal dynasties also ruled different regions of Qatar and Bahrain from time to time. After that, Abdul Aziz, the founders of the Saudi royal families, expanded his empire and not only captured different areas of the region's Gulf but also Qatar. The situation in Qatar also varies because the region was the center of civil war between the Ottomans, Saudi and Egyptians for many years. In 1821, ships of the East India Company bombarded Doha under the pretext of punishing pirates, due to which this town was destroyed and thousands of people were displaced. The British Empire laid the foundations of its occupations with this attack. At that time, Qatar was one of the poorest countries in the world. Qatar made its name in the manufactures of striped cloth, while fishing was the second major occupation of the peoples, where some who were a little richer among those poor people traded on a very limited scale. Shading and farming were also done for sustenance. Then in 1825, the dynasty emigrated as a regional leader that still rules Qatar today. This was the Al Thani family, the first leader of which was Sheikh Mohammed bin Al Thani. In 1867, the war between Bahrain and Qatar took place, and in 1868, the Saudi family handed over control of Qatar to the Al Thani family. In 1871, Qatar once again became part of the Ottoman Empire, but the Al Thani family continued to fight with the Ottoman, Turkish and its own neighbors. In 1916, the British Empire occupied Qatar, which remained intact until 1971. A century ago, in 1922, the population of this state was around 3 million and the area was around 12,000 kilometers. But this small Gulf state was virtually uninhabited land because the majority of the people living here were nomads, and Qatar was one of the poorest countries in the world. This situation became even more serious in the 1930s. What the Japanese invented pearl farming and developed the industry to the point of running the Qatari economy. After that, once again, there was a historic exodus from Qatar. And from the 1930 to the 1940, 3% of Qataris left the country. Things got so bad that, according to the United Nations report, in 1950 the population of Qatar was only 24,000 people. Most of these people went to Gulf states and Iran. Black gold oil has not only changed the destiny of the Gulf countries, but it has also played an important role in bringing about the Industrial Revolution. The progress the world has made since the discovery of black gold is unparalleled in human life. Although Chinese experts discovered oil in 600 BC, but the discovery of oil in the American state of Pennsylvania in 1859 changed the course of the economic history of the world. Oil was first discovered in Gulf country in Saudi Arabia in 1938 by an American company. On the other hand, oil had already been discovered in Iran in 908. Qatar fortunes opened in 1939. When oil was discovered in Jebel Thokhan in the southwestern regions of the country. However, the search for oil was delayed due to World War II and the second well was drilled in 1941. After that, in 1942, oil explorations in Qatar was stopped, which remained until 1947. The then impoverished Qatari government, which was already struggling to meet salaries of mining engineers and other employees, fell into more financial difficulties. Although the crown of Great Britain, which ruled it, helped it a lot during this time, but the Qatari government, surrounded by economic difficulties, continued to sink into difficulties. At the time, Qatar was facing other problem along with poverty, and that was that its citizens had also migrated from Qatar rapidly due to poverty. That it's also reduced the manpower. The problems escalated when a war broke out with Bahrain over the ownership of Qatari Zobra. This area is part of Qatar today. It was settled by Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa, the founders of the royal family. Due to the war and financial difficulties, the problems increased so much that the rulers of Qatar, Sheikh Abdullah bin Jassim Al Sani, had the mortgage his place for money. After the World War, survey was conducted to discover oil reserves in Qatar, and on the basis of this survey completed in 1947. In 1949, extensive oil extraction work was started in Qatar. Large oil reserves were discovered and the fate of Qatar changed immediately. Qatar started exporting large quantities of oil. Investors rushed to invest in Qatar after hearing about the vast reserves of black gold. The employment opportunities in the country suddenly increased, and not only those who migrated from the country due to poverty returned, but a large number of immigrants from Asian countries also turned to Qatar. Its manpower increased. Per capita income went from a few dollars a year to hundreds and then thousands of dollars within a decade. According to an estimate, the country whose population was limited to only 24,000 people in 1950. In 1970, the same population exceeded 1 lakh people. Nature seems to be very kind to Qatar, because on September 3, 1971, Qatar also gained independence from the British Crown. In the following years, 1972, Qatar fortunes changed when extensive gas deposits were discovered during drilling near the northeastern coast of the country, At first, people did not give much importance to gas reserves. However, 14 years later, it was discovered that this gas field was the largest non-associated natural gas field in the world, in which there was about 10% of world's gas reserves. Qatar's North Field covers an area of about 6,000 km, which is more than half of the entire Qatar. After Russia and Iran, Qatar has the largest gas reserves in the world. However, these two countries are much larger than Qatar in terms of area and population, and their own needs are also much greater. Today, Qatar is the largest producer of liquefied natural gas (LNG) in the world. Qatar is the third largest producer of gas in the world but the second largest exporter of gas. On the other hand, it ranks 14th in the world in terms of oil productions. This Qatar receives 70% of its total national income for oil and gas alone. In the 1970s, Qatar, Bahrain and the UAE successively gained independence from the British Empire. After that, the most important event in the region was the 1991 Gulf War, in which Qatar supported Saudi Arabia. However, various regional issues in which the problems of Bahrain in the most prominent Saudi Arabia and Qatar have not yet reached an agreement. Similarly, the Saudi authorities remain angry with Al Jazeera's independent policies. Apart from Bahrain, Qatar is also in conflicts with UAE, Oman, Libya and Egypt. 1995 is very important in the history of the Qatari family because in these years Hamad bin Khalifa took the power from his father and laid the foundations of liberals and modern Qatar. His new government was immediately welcomed by America, France and the Western world, due to which it is believed that Hamad bin Khalifa and the help of these countries in overthrowing his father's government. The Qatar Central Bank was established in 1993, but the stock exchange was established in 1997. In 1996, Hamad bin Khalifa launched Al Jazeera TV, the largest TV network in the Gulf countries. In 1999, he gave women the right to vote. In 2005, Qatar's first written constitution was drafted, and in 2008, the first Roman Catholic Church was built in Qatar. The 21st century brought a new message for the development of Qatar, and the country began to walk on the highway of economic development very fast. The population of this country exceeded 29 lakh. Precisely, the numbers of ethnic Qataris in Qatar is around 10 to 15. They also include Qataris of Arab and African descent. Nationally, according to a 2019 survey, 25% are Indians, while the number of Nepals and Bangladesh is around 12%. Only 5% of Pakistanis lives in Qatar. Officially, 68% of Qatar is Muslim, while Hindus and Christians make up around 14% each. Today in Qatar, you will see glimpses of development in every street, because between 2003 and 2004 alone, GDP increased from 3.7% to 19.2%. Not only that, just 2 years later in 2006, the economy grew at a rate of 26.2%, the highest rate in Qatar's history. In the year 2007 to 2011, the growth rate remained more than 10%. But after that, in the next 9 years, this growth rate increased to 2%. However, now it has once again reached close to 5% in 2022. A country that was suffering from poverty until 1940. In 1980, its gross national product reached $18 billion, when its per capita income reached $72,000. In the first years of this century, 2001, its GDP was $55 billion, and the per capita income was $96,000. $100,000. Then Wheel of Fortunes continued, and in 2022 the gross national product exceeded $304 billion. It worked 5 days a week from Saturday to Wednesday. In Qatar, income tax is not applied on the income of peoples and general sales tax on various sources or goods. Qatar is developing rapidly, but it is illegal to form a labor union or associations here. To make Qatar a modern country, the plant that was planted by Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, his son Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who took over in 2013, made it a strong tree. Internet access in Qatar was made available to the public in 1996, but millions campus of regions universities have mostly opened in his country. In Sweden, Norway, Finland and Denmark, education is free or very cheap up to a level. But education in Qatar is absolutely free at all levels. So, co-education is not permitted in public schools and colleges in Qatar. Many international schools, colleges and universities also have campuses in Qatar. Surprisingly, the first school was built here in 1949. At this time, the literacy rate in the country is more than 80%. In Qatar, public health facilities are not only available free of charge to all citizens, but also to those persons who are granted official residence despite being foreign. Due to prosperity, these crimes are negligible, and Qatar ranks second in the list of safe countries in the world. The royal family of Qatar, who once had to mortgage their house, today it is among the top 5 royal families in the world, whose wealth is estimated to be more than $300 billion. The star of modern Qatar's fortunes shone once more at the time when in 2010 it got to host the World Cup, the mega event of world's most popular sport, football, and at a cost of more than $200 billion. It developed such an infrastructure that even the Western world was standing in. Qatar has gained prominence worldwide for its skyscrapers, luxuries, artificial islands, and state-of-the-art stadiums. Finally, let's tell you the most interesting things, that the numbers of women in Qatar is so low that there is 1 woman for every 3 men. Therefore, Qataris have to marry in other countries. How did you like this information about Qatar? Be sure to write us in comments.